Darkstalker wasn't at all surprised to find Vulture on the other side of the door as he left Moon's rooms. The Sandwing had a practiced diplomatic smile, and his thoughts were quiet and only wondering if Darkstalker had managed to soothe Moon at all. It was beginning to get quite unnerving how good Vulture was at thinking exactly what he meant to. Their usual games of attempting to figure the other out were becoming tiring, and the urge to send him away was very real. Closing the door quietly, Darkstalker took a deep breath before he addressed the old Sandwing.
What is your report?
The Nightwings have settled in nicely,
said Vulture evenly.
Most are now staying close to the Diamond Quarter, but there are some now living in the homes within the canyons.
Find out if any of them require repairs. I will make it my priority.
Darkstalker turned and began to walk down the hall without a look towards Vulture. But the Sandwing followed him anyway, his voice at Darkstalker's flank without missing a beat.
Their queen has also managed to address them. She is taking a pilgrimage, and has appointed a council to rule in her stead whilst she is away. Will you be on that council?
And be accused of implementing myself in a position of governance?
The Nightwing snorted.
If I wished for a surefire way to be exiled from my tribe once again, I would have seized rulership over them back in the rainforest.
But you could still do it,
Vulture urged. But his tone and thoughts made it seem like it was just a pondering said aloud, making Darkstalker second-guess his initial instinct that the Sandwing was baiting him.
No one else amongst them has the will that you do. No one else can see the future and then have the power to lead them through the troubles that you can see coming.
All these reasons were justifications Darkstalker himself had said when Clearsight and Fathom had asked him why he wanted to be king. It was so easy to see the logic behind the words. So easy to hear the voice in his head that whispered, "You are made for this. What is your power for if not for this?" But Darkstalker shook himself at the whisper. He could rationalize it later, but for now it could be put off.
They need my guidance, not my dictatorship.
Yes,
Vulture murmured, his thoughts drifting towards Moon.
They have only just come out of one, haven't they? Such a tragedy, one that could have been avoided at so many turns.
Like what?
Well, take the Icewings, for example. They came to the rainforest to end the war, but the battle was already won. They didn't care, though. I could see it in their soldiers. They wanted to fight, and didn't care if the Nightwings had already surrendered or not. Could you not feel it?
Looking back, Darkstalker had to admit that he had indeed sensed sinister intentions amongst the Icewings. Their minds were red with bloodlust, their heartbeats were raised, their teeth barely contained. Queen Glacier had been hostile, yes, but her guards had all been too eager to jump to her defense. They wanted an excuse.
This is why,
Vulture continued,
the dream of the Dragons of Destiny will never be fulfilled. The tribes cannot coexist. There is too much bad blood, too much inherited prejudice. None of them will ever accept a new world order unless they are forced to.
The easy solution would be for Darkstalker to look into the futures and confirm if that was true. But he didn't want to. That would make it too real. And if he found out the Icewings really wanted him and his tribe dead, he didn't know what he might do to protect them. When morning arrived, the Nightwings all went to their quarters to sleep. It had been quite an adjustment for them, to transition to being nocturnal after so long, but already they were improving. Vulture waited until the last Nightwings took themselves to bed before he finally returned to his own room within the castle. It had been another night of slow progress, but any victory was worth celebrating. His quarters were furnished with the comforts of home, rugs and pillows laid on the floor, incense burning off to give a strong aroma, gold and jewelry displayed brazenly to delight the eye and for Vulture to be able to tell at a glance that everything was still in its rightful place. In the corner of the room was a wrinkled and worn old bag of chalk chippings. Reaching in, Vulture mechanically popped a piece of chalk into his mouth and chewed methodically. He loved the way chalk whitened his teeth, but hated the way it tasted and grayed his tongue. Most dragons were put off by his habit, and he found that it gave him an advantage when they were put on the back foot. It did not surprise him when his grandson Sirocco came barging into the room, with the same lack of manners and wit he usually possessed. The young, burly dragon was nearly drooling with caged rage.
If one more stupid NightWing has to ask me for directions with their stupid voice, I'm gonna stab them in their stupid faces.
And he swung his tail for emphasis. Vulture had to fight really hard not to lose his temper with his moronic grandson. Why had the moons cursed him with such a lackluster legacy? Sirocco was strong but dumb as bricks, and Rattlesnake was vicious but equally as stupid. Kibley was the only one who had even half of Vulture's intelligence, but he was also a traitor and an idealist, neither of which Vulture could use.
How much longer do we have to keep this up?
Sirocco grumbled as he sat slouched against a wall.
We helped the big NightWing. We held the buyer in the deal. Now let's get our treasure and go.
If you weren't so useful at destroying others, I could very happily kill you right now. You waste the oxygen you breathe with your idiocy.
Vulture hissed.
Can't you understand that things have changed? This is no longer an extortion racket. This is something bigger. We have finally found purpose.
In this dump?
Sirocco scoffed.
I ain't no laborer and I'm not gonna...
Before he could finish the sentence, Vulture's tail had struck out and the poisonous barb was poised and pointed right underneath his grandson's chin. The old dragon hadn't even turned around. Sirocco stilled. He'd seen his grandfather do this enough times to know he was deadly serious.
If you are so encumbered by your lack of vision,
Vulture whispered. He turned around, but did not remove his fret. He slowly came up to Sirocco and placed a talon on the tip of his snout, hooking one claw into the soft scales of Sirocco's eyelid.
Allow me to unburden you.
Sirocco trembled and squeezed his eyes shut. Under his breath, he prayed to whatever gods were listening. The wait was agonizing. Each second seemed to stretch out longer than the last. It felt as if the point of the claw was digging in closer and closer to his flesh, and then vanished. Sirocco let out a shaky breath and opened both his eyes. Nothing had happened. His knees felt weak.
We will be staying here,
said Vulture as he lounged on one of his many goose-feathered cushions. He pulled out a bag from underneath a table and began to count vials of different kinds of liquid.
And when your friend returns from the north, we will guide things along where they need to be.
Yes, sir,
said Sirocco uneasily.
Darkstalker is the only one who can break and remake this world, and I intend to be there every step of the way to make sure he fulfills that destiny.
Vulture chuckled to himself as he tossed a vial of luminous green liquid and caught it in his palm. He could smell the stench of eggs even through the cork.
Don't you see? The second scorching is about to begin. A new world will be born from the ashes. Our world.